and welcome to episode 8 of RaiderZone, the podcast. I'm Will Brienza, alongside me, Jacob Utar, Ben Johnson Bowers, Brendan Devaney, and Alexandria Patron, as we get ready to talk a little more sports. What's happened last week? A lot happened, obviously, in college football. The NBA has started, NCAA men's basketball and women's basketball in full swing, and the NFL playoff picture taking place, heating up. There's still a lot of spots available, a lot of clinching scenarios, as we will start with basketball, and we'll start with college basketball to be specific. With that being said, in men's, the top 10 shifts a bit. Gonzaga stays on top, Baylor stays at 2, Kansas moves up to 3 as Iowa drops 1 to 4, and then Villanova rounds out the top 5 by moving up 2 spots into the 5th spot. The game we talked about would be the game of the week last week. Was a common pick was number 1 Gonzaga taking on number 3 Iowa. Gonzaga does not skip a beat. Takes down Iowa 99-88 after missing a couple weeks. Number 12 Wisconsin destroys number 23 Louisville 85-48. Biggest margin of victory in Wisconsin school history against a ranked opponent. And then number 3 Kansas takes down number 7 West Virginia last night 79-65. And a top 10 battle of the Big 12. There's some big matchups next week as well. So, Jacob, I'll start with you. Thoughts on last week's games, and what's your game of the week for next week?
Nothing really surprised me that much out of this past week. I thought Gonzaga was going to beat Iowa, but I think what surprised me about that game was just how they did it. I didn't expect them to really dominate the way that they did. I believe they were up 14 or 15 at halftime, something like that. So really this game was never out of question for them. So I really expected more fight out of Iowa, but I think it shows just how good Gonzaga is this year, especially with the young freshman Jalen Suggs. I love him as an NBA prospect. I think he's going to be really good in the league. I think he's a one-and-done guy myself, but I think he's the leader of this Gonzaga team, and I'm expecting Gonzaga to make a deep tournament run now. They might even be my early favorites to win a national title. But I also was surprised about how Rutgers took down Illinois this past week too, just because you don't really hear about Rutgers being that good in recent years, and now they really seem to be legit. So I don't know if they're actually a contender this year or if it's just that Illinois is not as good as we thought they would be. And so for my game of the week, it actually involves Rutgers. I think the Rutgers-Ohio State game is going to be a big challenge for Rutgers, and it's going to see if they're contenders or not. And also they have another game later in the week. They play Purdue, and Purdue's not ranked, but Purdue's always good in basketball. Mm-hmm. They're about 6-3 this year, so they're still a decent team. So it's going to be 2 big challenges for Rutgers to see really how they stand in college basketball this year. From what I saw against Illinois, I think that they're really good this year, but we'll see how they play this week against Ohio State and Purdue.
Ben, your thoughts on and games you're looking forward to coming up?
Yeah, you look at that. Gonzaga looks like they're a national title contender. They did a great job, despite going up against Luka Garza, who's been putting up video game numbers. They managed to win pretty solidly against Iowa. So I think they've got to be on your short list of national title contenders right now. I would pick them right now to win a national title, or at least make it to that championship game. That's a solid team. Games looking forward to, 2 Big Ten matchups. Number 11, Rutgers, and number 23, Ohio State. Ohio State favored by 2.5 points. That should be a really good Big Ten battle. And then 2 days later on Friday, that's tonight. That one's tonight, but 2 days later on Friday, number 9, Wisconsin, number 12, Michigan State. The Big Ten looks like it's going to be a really, really deep conference again this year, and we already getting some really good matchups.
Brendan.
Yeah, this past weekend was a really good one. Obviously, Gonzaga beating Iowa. It's like Jacob said, that the way they did it, a wire-to-wire win over the Hawkeyes, keeping Garza pretty quiet throughout the game. Mm-hmm. Another one, and this team that I can't believe is having this kind of start is Kentucky. At 1-5, losing to North Carolina up in Cleveland on Saturday, and they led North Carolina for the majority of the game, and then they let the game slip away at the end. They're 1-5 for the first time since 1926. Just a one of the worst starts in school history. And the fact that Calipari has to put his name under this year is not good for his legacy. And then another game that I was watching on Sunday actually, was a huge Big East matchup between Xavier and Marquette, a buzzer beater at the end by Nate Johnson. Xavier winning 91-88. Musketeers, a 9-0 start, kind of quietly under the radar, proving that they can be dangerous this year in the Big East, contend for that title. So that's why my game of the week is actually Xavier and Creighton, a huge Big East matchup. The Big Ten is having a great year, but the Big East is as well. Creighton and Xavier, 2 top 25 teams, should be fun on Saturday.
Yeah, so for me, I agree. The Gonzaga-Iowa game, I was a little shocked. Gonzaga really controlled the entirety of the game. It seemed like every time Iowa would get it back to single digits, Gonzaga would hit a 3 or an one or just a big bucket that completely swung momentum back into their favor. So they hold on to the 11-point win. Wisconsin looking dangerous in a dangerous conference, so we'll see. They have a big one coming up this week against Michigan State as they break into the top 10. My game of the week, I agree with Brendan. Xavier, the 9-0 start. I want to see if they can get the 10-0 against a Creighton team who is a conference foe, but at the same time is usually one of the better teams in the Big East, along with Xavier. So we'll see. That's a big one. Then I'm excited for Gonzaga, Virginia, just because Gonzaga, obviously, great game against Iowa. I want to see if they can do it again against another team who's well known as far as being good in basketball. Virginia, one of their slower starts as of recent history, but they're at home, so maybe they can knock off the number one team. But if Gonzaga plays like they did against Iowa, it could be an ugly game, even though it's a top 25 matchup. So that's the one I'm really looking out for. So we'll stick with basketball as we'll move over to the NBA now. Opening night was last night, so we're underway in the NBA season. But Adam Silver, big news. He touches on the fact that the NBA is talking about expansion. So it's reported that if the NBA does expand, if they were to expand one team, one city, it's about a $1 billion profit for the NBA from the city. So in times like this where you can't have the fans, your season was weird last year, it's something that they're really looking into right now because of that $1 billion paycheck. So with that being said, Jacob, I'll start with you again. What city or cities do you see getting a team first? Or if they do two, which two cities do you see getting a team first if this happens?
So I came up with 3 cities, actually. The first one's really obvious. It's Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle's just well known for basketball. Everybody loves basketball still up there. Some of the best products of the NBA. Guys like Jamal Crawford, even on the Cavs, Kevin Porter Jr., he's up from Seattle. So they're big basketball fans up there. And obviously they'd probably bring back the Sonics name because of that, because they're one of the most iconic franchises in the NBA, even though that they're long gone. They won a title in the 70s. They were relevant the whole entire way that they were a team. So it just makes sense to bring it back to Seattle. Mm-hmm. But I also think that Cincinnati, in a way, could kind of be intriguing because they too had basketball back in the early 60s. So they know what they're doing on that part. But also what has me thinking, the Cincinnati and Louisville area, they're very big on basketball there. Obviously, with Bearcats basketball, Louisville basketball, and even Big Blue Nation down with Kentucky. So you have the fan base already. Why not try to bring an NBA franchise in there? And even if it's not Cincinnati, like how I said, Louisville is so close by. You can even throw it in Louisville. They have the KFC Yum Center, which is a huge basketball complex. So you can put them there. But also another city that I thought that would be intriguing, because Adam Silver talked about it a few years ago when they were there. The NBA and NFL have each played games in Mexico City. And Adam Silver said a couple years ago that he would think about putting a G League franchise in there. So that had me thinking, why not try to put an NBA franchise in there? Because just think about the Raptors right now. They're the only team in Canada, and all of Canada loves them. So they have a huge fan base. I'm just thinking that if you throw a team down in Mexico City, all of Mexico is going to get behind them. So you're going to have a huge fan base there. Obviously, Mexico City doesn't have any pro sports in a big league like the NBA. So I just think that you'd get a lot of fans out of that. And I think it'd be a smart move for the NBA to move into a different country and really take over the market there too.
Love it. Brendan, where are you moving or where are you expanding?
Yeah, definitely have to agree with Seattle. I think that's a pretty obvious one that we can all agree on. Back the Supersonics. I mean, it's a sport-starving city as it is. They just gained an NHL team with the Kraken and have the Mariners and Seahawks there. And the Sounders in the MLS. So a huge sports city. NBA team would make a lot of sense. A city that I'm gonna throw out is Las Vegas. They have the summer league there that UNLV hosts. So they always have, a basketball heavy summer in Las Vegas. And within the last 3 and 4 years, they've just gained 2 professional teams, the Golden Knights in the NHL and the Raiders in the NFL coming from Oakland. So Vegas is proving to be, a huge professional sports city that has the ability, definitely financially, to host and have professional teams in the city. I think, it's obviously all the limelight and the pageantry of the city makes sense with the big star names that the NBA has. So having an NBA team in there would definitely make a lot of sense.
Love it. Ben, where's your expansion teams going?
Seattle's the obvious one. It's felt like they've needed a franchise since the move to OKC. But other than that, I mean, Buffalo, I think that's a fan base that, I mean, obviously they're incredibly passionate about their sports, whether it's the Sabres or the Bills. And they already have an arena there with the Buffalo Sabres. So they already have an arena built, ready to go. They just need the franchise to be officially handed over to them. But then if I was to pick a third one, I'd say probably Cincy, down southern Ohio, that northern Kentucky area, which is a big basketball event area with Louisville, Cincinnati, and Kentucky's also somewhere down around there. So I think any one of those 3 would be a good market to go into.
Love it. So I'm going to change things up. I don't think Seattle's getting a team at all. I'm going to go Lincoln, Nebraska, and Canton, Ohio. I'm kidding. I think Seattle's, you guys all touched on the 3 that I actually wrote down. So Seattle's the obvious choice. Bring back the Supersonics has been a thing for years. I think if expansion happens, they're the first thing that happens. Vegas was my second choice, Brendan, I think, with the recent additions that they've gotten as far as professional sports go. I think the NBA would be smart in making them a destination for an expansion team. And then my third one was Buffalo that Ben touched on. We know how passionate Buffalo is about their sports, and maybe they add a basketball team. Exploring, Jacob, you talked about Mexico City. When I was thinking, where could they go outside the country? I didn't even think of Mexico City. That was a good one. I was thinking, Vancouver, maybe they bring back – they couldn't bring back the Grizzlies because they're in Memphis, but, bring a team back to Vancouver. And then you have Toronto and Vancouver, the 2 teams up north. But I see it very unlikely that Canada gets a second team, especially since the Grizzlies' name is taken. And I think the only way Vancouver would get a team is the same situation that Seattle's in. So I'm going to say Seattle, Las Vegas are my top 2. Buffalo's an option.
Yeah.
I like the Cincinnati pick, but we'll see. I'd love it if it happens, but we'll see. 32 teams.
Yeah,
maybe.
The whole thing with Vancouver, I thought Vancouver too. But then I think what's really going to throw Vancouver off too is the fact that the Raptors just won the finals a couple of years ago. I don't think that any Canada fans are really going to be buying a whole Vancouver. Let's get to that Canada team. I think they're all so focused on Toronto now since they're actually good.
Yeah, we're the North,
They wouldn't consider Vancouver, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we'll see though. Like I said, I'd love maybe a 2-team expansion. You got 16 on each side. The only thing is with Seattle and Las Vegas being my top 2. Would you have to do a league realignment? Maybe Vegas and Seattle stay in the Western Conference and Memphis becomes an Eastern Conference team? I don't. It's something that you'd have to think about. It'd definitely be weird, but if those are the top 2 and those end up being the 2, you're definitely going to think of league realignment unless they want to go 17-15, which I doubt they do. So
would they add just one team and then for a couple of years?
That's what I was wondering. 31
lopsided and odd.
Yeah, 31 MLB or NBA teams. I was wondering the same thing. That's why I don't know. I'm the kind of guy when they flip through the volume on their TV channel, I always pick actually a prime number. I know that's really weird. So like I'm usually like 17 or 19, but
yeah, because remember.
So 31, I love it, but for basketball,
remember eventually baseball when the Astros used to be in the National League. I think it was the NL Central or NL West.
NL Central.
They had 6 teams.
Yep.
And then the AL West only had 4 teams.
And that was so weird because they had an even amount of teams,
weird.
but they chose to go 16, 14.
It made no sense.
That's back when there was you had one interleague series too, though, because there was even teams on each side, 16 and 14.
True.
So you didn't have an interleague conference or interleague series every night. You know what I mean? So now you do because of 15 and 15. So 2 are forced. But we'll see. The fact that they're talking about it's exciting, especially if you're Seattle, townie in Seattle. Because you kind of feel like, Seattle's the only one being talked about on ESPN and all the sports channels as if this happens, it looks like they're the first. So this has got to be exciting for the citizens of Seattle if this happens. So we'll jump over to opening night. Again, last night was opening night for the NBA. We had 2 games. We'll talk about the earlier one first. So Brooklyn, the Nets dominate opening night with a 125-99 win over the Golden State Warriors. Durant scores 22. Kyrie adds 26 in the win as the duo looks lethal, especially in the first quarter. Brooklyn outscored Golden State 40-25 in that first quarter. Curry leads the scoring for the Warriors with 20. Brendan, I'll start with you. Are the Nets even more legit than we expected?
I expected them to come out hot with Durant and Irving. I didn't think it to be this lopsided. And hey, go back to last week's podcast. I thought Golden State was going to win this game. Boy, was I wrong. Golden State last year was arguably one of the worst defensive teams in the league, and getting some of their guys back, adding Wiseman, obviously looks like that's not going to change. Durant and Irving, after one game, obviously can play with each other. Durant looked like the same old Durant back when he was playing with Golden State. It doesn't even look like he had an injury, to be honest. He came out and proved, everyone wrong. Obviously, coming back from that injury easily. Are they legit? I'm not going to get, too caught up after one game. I think they're definitely a finals contender out of the East. But I'm not ready to, crown them already after one game.
Yeah. Ben, your thoughts on the Nets-Warriors game?
Well, I think this is pretty much what I expected. It's a healthy Kevin Durant, a healthy Kyrie Irving. Durant's a good shooter, so I didn't think his game was going to fall off that much after the Achilles injury. So this is about what I expected, the domination and the scoring output for sure. Kind of surprised Curry didn't have more points. Mm-hmm. But, they got some young guys. They got some guys like James Wiseman, who gets experience, will probably get better with time. So the Warriors are a project, but the Nets are definitely legit and a title contender.
Jacob.
So there's 72 games in an NBA season, so I'm not going to get overly excited about the Nets and overly concerned about the Warriors. But first with Golden State, what I took away from the game, though, is without Klay Thompson, this offense is literally nothing, which just really surprised me in a way because I expected guys like Andrew Wiggins and Kelly Oubre to really play a lot better than they did. But when they're both shooting around the 3 for 12, 3 for 13 mark, that's just not going to cut it. Yeah. And Steph, he didn't necessarily have his best game. He only shot 7 for 21 from the floor. But still, it was clear the offense lived and died by Steph Curry. And I think that's going to be how it's going to be all season. And so I'm just a little bit concerned about the Warriors offensively. James Wiseman showed some flashes towards the end of the game, but that's garbage time. So let's see what he does before that. And then with Brooklyn, I think that on offense, they're going to be almost unstoppable. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving just look absolutely incredible. They need that third option, and it looks like it's going to be Karis LeVert. And I actually love him coming off the bench because it's really smart by Steve Nash. At first, when I looked at it, I was thinking it's not really that good of a move. But now, thinking about it more, he's without Kyrie and he's without Kevin Durant. So when those two want to rest, they bring Karis LeVert in, and he's easily going to get you 16 to 20 off the bench. So right now, if he stays off the bench, this is just my early prediction, he'd be the sixth man of the year if they keep taking him off the bench. And obviously, you need Spencer Dinwiddie and Joe Harris to score for you too, which I think they will. They kind of had a little bit of off games, but that's understandable because it's the first game of the season. But yeah, I think Brooklyn's going to be really exciting to watch. And Golden State, I would never think in a million years I'd say I kind of feel bad for Golden State, but I really do feel bad for Golden State in this situation.
Yeah. The last night watching Steph Curry, just like he was trying to do those pull-up threes where he comes up the court, stops from behind the three-point line, like 5 feet from behind the line, and hit those pull-up threes, and like they're complete bricks. That's what I'm worried about with the Warriors. He's not hitting his threes like he had normally done. He's just not the same old Steph Curry, and that's, if you're a Warriors fan, you should be really worried about that.
Yeah, and that was always the thing too with Steph. Like when he would have a bad game, it was usually Klay Thompson would come in and he'd hit like his 10 for 15 type game, something like that. Or Kevin Durant in the case too would come in, have a great game. They don't really have that second option, which is why they're probably going to struggle a lot this year on offense.
The braids were too tight, guys. That's why he wasn't hitting his shots. But no, I'm glad, Jacob, you touched on the name Steve Nash because that needs to be talked about more. Everybody talks about Irving Durant's first game in a Nets jersey, but Steve Nash's first game as a coach, he outcoached Steve Kerr. He did. His game plan was well prepared, and with the Karis LeVert thing, he knew that if he has LeVert coming off the bench, he has that third scoring option like you mentioned, and I think Steve Nash, this was a big step in the start of a coaching career for him, taking down a Steph Curry-led Warriors team and out-coaching a coach that is a pretty darn good coach. Has a couple rings under his name. So
I don't know. This year for Steve Kerr is going to be a huge year
100%.
in his legacy. How good of a coach he can be, because when he was coaching the Warriors in the 4-year run when they played the Cavs every year, I don't know how much coaching there was there.
Yeah.
Like, he just put that team out on the court. They jacked up threes the whole game and won easily. Like, I don't know how much coaching there was there.
Some of the plays they ran were nicely drawn up, though. You know what I mean? Some of the plays that Steve Kerr draws up in those during the runs, during the run was pretty nice. That's what I'm saying. Steve Nash just came out and looked like the better coach, though.
Yeah, I would say this about Steve Kerr. In 2015, he was an incredible coach because he came in, Mark Jackson, he had basically the same exact team before Steve Kerr came in, and he couldn't get them past the second round. But Steve Kerr was the guy that drew up the plays, created the culture. So he was a great coach there. 2016, it was kind of the same thing. But then I think ever since Kevin Durant showed up, he just hasn't coached at all, like how Brendan touched on. So really, this is going to be a big test to see. Like, you don't have the excuse anymore that everybody's hurt, and you definitely don't have all the superstar power anymore. So we'll see how good of a coach he is this year.
Yeah, but kudos to Steve Nash. Kudos to the Nets. You start 1-0. You have the best record in basketball. So we'll move on to the second game of the night. Clippers-Lakers, the Battle of L.A. And before this game started, Shaq was talking about his opinion on the rivalry, and he said, honestly, he doesn't know where it came from. He said both L.A. teams always had huge respect for each other. They always loved each other, and if one made the playoffs and one didn't, they were on the other team's side 100%. Now both teams are good, and it's kind of seeming like it's heating up a little bit. You have one of your key players for the Clippers leave for the Lakers. That probably fueled the fire a bit in Harrell. But Clippers, they take episode 1. They win 116-109. Kind of blew a lead there. They had a 20-point lead. It was blown in the second quarter, but they hold on after a strong third quarter. Paul George leads the scoring with 33, but don't worry. He did look like himself with a pass out of bounds to absolutely nobody. Kawhi Leonard adds 26, and LeBron was the leading scorer for the Lakers with 22, as it just seemed like the big two and LeBron and AD weren't there as far as points go. They combined for 36. So, Ben, I'll start with you. Thoughts on the Battle of LA Episode 1?
I think the Clippers are finally kind of playing like we thought they were going to play when they were in the playoffs last year before they melted down. So I think they might be able to very well give the Lakers, who did a great job of reloading, a pretty good run for their money when the playoffs come. But playoff LeBron's a different story. So, take this with a grain of salt. It's a long season, but things are looking good for the Clippers for sure after one game. Paul George looks like he's back close to an MVP level. Kawhi did his thing. If they can do that, they can have a great season, a deep playoff run, and hey, we might finally get that Battle of LA in the playoffs.
Yeah, they talked about Paul George, his quarantine play, got the vaccine, and he looked much better than he did when he was in the bubble. Jacob, you look like you wanted to say something about that, so I'll go to you. I'll shoot it over to you.
Well, I mean, this game is exactly what I expected. The Lakers, they had 71 days of rest in between winning an NBA championship and playing on opening night. So, to me, every single guy on that Lakers team, especially LeBron and Anthony Davis, looked really tired in the beginning. I think LeBron started out 1 for 6, 1 for 7, something like that. So he didn't really look like himself out there at all in the beginning. Obviously, he's still LeBron, so he's still going to throw up his 20 points per game. But, I mean, the Clippers, I'm still not sold on them at all, really, because it's just the fact. They had the 20-point lead, and they almost blew it by halftime. And in that whole series against Denver, when they were up 3-1, they 3 times in a row were up double digits and blew the lead every single time. So if you're blowing big leads, I still just can't believe in you personally. I think the Clippers have the potential to be the second best team in the West because I think the Lakers, when they start to get in their groove, because you got to remember, they added a bunch of new guys like Marc Gasol, Montrezl Harrell, Dennis Schroeder, Wesley Matthews. They all have to get accustomed to the Lakers' way. So it's going to take some time for them. I think the Lakers are going to be the best team in the West, and then I think it's going to be a dogfight between teams like the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Trailblazers, even the Mavericks potentially could be in that 2 to 4 range. So I'm not sold on the Clippers yet at all. It's a good win to start, but until they stop blowing these big leads, I just can't have them above the Lakers at all.
Yeah, I agree. Brendan, your thoughts on the game?
It looked like the Lakers really did not care about the game last night at all. I'm not saying that, they didn't go out there to win, but it was just so lackadaisical. It was ring night, so they were emotional after that. Like Jacob said, 71 days of rest from one season to another. Not really easy, to get yourself physically and mentally prepared for a new season. And, having to go out and play a team like the Clippers, not going to be really easy. And they didn't even have Anthony Davis and LeBron on the floor for the last 5 minutes when it was crunch time. And they still had a chance to win the ball game. So they didn't even have, a full unit out there. Put the Lakers and the Clippers against each other in March and April, you're going to get a different outcome, I think. So, it's game one. I'm not ready to crown, the Clippers champions of the West yet. So a long ways away. And I agree with what Jacob said. The Clippers, I don't think have everything put together yet. You can't blow a 20-point lead against a really good team like the Lakers and expect to win. It just so happened to be, a night where the Lakers were just, getting everything under their belt and getting the season underway in a very quiet and slow way. So, yeah, it wasn't, the game that I really wanted to watch. I'll rather watch this game in the playoffs.
Yeah, and this will be an exciting series if it does happen nonetheless. But, like you guys said, you guys touched on everything. It's game one. There's 71 more. The Lakers start their pursuit of 71-1 now. That's basically all they left out on. They don't get to go 72 now. So I know they'll move on. They have another big matchup coming up here on Christmas, which we'll get into in a second. But for the Clippers, I think it's a big step in the fact that you were able to hold on and win. But at the same time, there are some worries. You aren't that good when George and Leonard aren't on the court. That's something to worry about. But when they are on the court, they can hang with anybody. So that's the biggest thing. Losing Harrell is going to be bigger than than a lot of people thought. The depth's just not there now. So we'll see going forward. But Clippers are 1-0. They lead the West. So Nets, Clippers right now, the two best teams in basketball if you're talking about record. We'll move on. Christmas Day is coming up, guys. 2 days. We talked about last week. The snow came. Kind of felt like Christmas. It's gone. It's green grass. It's 45 degrees out. There's no snow to be seen. So again, 2 days till Christmas doesn't feel like Christmas, but it will when you're with family watching basketball. So there's a full slate of games on Christmas Day. Pelicans will take on the Heat in Miami. Warriors will travel to Milwaukee and take on Giannis and the Bucks. Nets have another big matchup as they are on the road against the Celtics as Kyrie takes on his whole team. Mavericks, Lakers, so you have Luka and LeBron, so the future of the league and the guy that's ran the league for quite some time now. And then Clippers, Nuggets, so a rematch of the series that knocked the Clippers off last year in the playoffs, as you'll have Jokic, and he'll be taking on the big two of George and Leonard. Jacob, I'll start with you. Which game or games are you looking forward to the most?
So in a normal Christmas Day environment, I would have said the Nets at Celtics all day, every day, because Kyrie Irving has this thing where he does not play either in Cleveland or Boston. He hasn't played in Boston yet with the Nets, and when he was both in Boston and in Brooklyn, he's only played in Cleveland once. So there's just this weird thing about him that he doesn't go back to the teams that he used to play in. So I think that the Celtics fans would just give him so much crap in a normal atmosphere that I would love to see that. But since there's no fans, I'm going to go with the game that people might not talk about that much because the Lakers are playing the Mavericks and the Clippers are playing the Nuggets. But I think the Pelicans and Heat is really intriguing to me just because I love watching Zion Williamson play personally. I want to see his growth this year. I think Brandon Ingram has a chance to grow even more this year too. But also, I'm really fascinated by the Heat because I want to see if they were just a product of the bubble or if they actually are this good. I personally believe that they are this good because I think Jimmy Butler's just that good of a leader, and Bam Adebayo is that underrated of a player. And even a guy like Tyler Hero, I'm expecting him to continue his great play from the bubble. So I think it's going to show a lot about the Heat to see if they're still what they were in the bubble. And it's just the excitement to watch Zion Williamson for me personally. That's why I'm excited to watch the game.
Brendan, which game you most excited to watch on Christmas Day?
Yeah, Jacob mentioned a lot of good things there with Pelicans and Heat. A lot of young talent in that game on both sides. The future of the league on both those teams. So that would be a really good one. But they made the marquee game 8 o'clock prime time, Lakers and Mavericks, for a reason. The future of the league and Luka Doncic against the young bloods and LeBron and Anthony Davis. That I cannot wait to watch that game. To see where those two teams are at. Where's Doncic at? Where's his play at after that bubble with the short rest from one season to another? He's probably one of the most electrifying players in the league right now. Most exciting to watch. But the Nets and Celtics, I totally forgot about Kyrie not playing in Cleveland or Boston when he was with Brooklyn. One of the dumbest storylines in basketball, I think, which adds to the mystery that is Kyrie Irving. But yeah, a lot of good games. I think the only game that I really wouldn't really want to watch is Warriors and Bucks, because the Warriors just are not the same as I'm sure the people who made the schedule were hoping for, and I think there's going to be a lopsided game with Giannis dominating.
Ben.
I gotta say Lakers, Mavs. I mean, that's the obvious one. Luka Doncic, who's by all accounts the future of the league, going to be a multi-time MVP when it's all done. LeBron James, the reigning best player in the league, even if he didn't win MVP like he should have. But I think that's just going to be a good matchup. Luka's an amazing player, and LeBron just continues to defy age. So I think that should be a good head-to-head matchup between those two.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward most to Mavericks-Lakers just because LeBron on Christmas Day is always fun to watch, and Luka's becoming one of my favorite players in the NBA. Warriors-Bucks, that's an interesting one just because I want to see the new Bucks. I mean, obviously still got Giannis, but with Holiday, I want to see the new Bucks taking on a Warriors team that can be good. Also, I don't know if you remember this, but when the Warriors went on that long win streak to start the season, the Bucks ended it. So there might still be some fire from that, 5 years ago. No, but I think that one's going to be a little more interesting than everyone expects. But overall, I think this is one of the best slate of games we've seen on Christmas Day. I think all 5 games are going to be good games to watch and will hold your attention. So, no Knicks. We don't see the Knicks on Christmas Day. So we won't get to see them lose, Jacob. But so we'll move on to football now, as we'll talk some college football first, as we'll talk conference championships before we talk about the college football playoffs. So we'll start with the first game of the day, the noon game, the Big Ten championship. So number 3, Ohio State, they take down number 14, Northwestern, and really what is a defensive battle. Ohio State, honestly, they were expected to win this game by much more, but I think the biggest reason why was the fact that Fields went 12 of 27 for 114 yards and 2 picks. That was the biggest thing in keeping them from blowing this game out. But on the bright side for the Buckeyes, Trey Sermon rushes for 331 yards, setting the single-game record in school history, breaking the record that was once owned by Eddie George. Was worried there they weren't going to give him the ball and let him break the record, but they did, and he did it. So Ohio State, nonetheless, they win the game. That's all they needed to do to get into the playoffs, 6-0. But I want to talk a little bit more than just, hey, the Buckeyes won. I want to talk, Ben, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the underperforming of Justin Fields against the 2 best defenses he's played all season? Is this worrisome? Is it hurting his draft stock? Or do you think this is good for him, get these 2 out of the way before you have to play Clemson?
Probably does hurt his draft stock a little bit, but at the end of the day, adversity is kind of what you need to go through. So this probably isn't the worst thing to kind of struggle a little bit, because the adversity does make you better at the end of the day than just breezing by.
Mm-hmm.
But defense stepped up, and that was despite a bunch of starters out on both sides of the ball. I mean, the number 1 receiver, Chris Olave, was out too.
Yeah, and Julian Fleming looked really good, the freshman. I think he played a much better game than Wilson even. So that's a bright spot as well for not only that game, but the future of the Buckeyes.
Yeah. And I think you had to put that in perspective. Like, there was a lot of good players that were out. So the fact that they were able to battle in there and not get down on themselves and just keep going out there and making plays, that's pretty good. They might not be able to beat Clemson, but that's just because Trevor Lawrence is on another level. But if the defense can play like they did against Northwestern, against Clemson, Ohio State has a legitimate chance, because defense does win championships.
100%. And if Sermon can come out and run the ball like he did. Brendan, your thoughts on Justin Fields' not so good of a performance in the Big Ten championship?
Yeah, I don't think it was, Fields at all. He had a couple of huge runs that kept the pressure on Northwestern on their defense. There was points in that game in the second quarter, second half, where he kind of did take over the game, kept drives going, and kept his foot on the gas. I think it was just more of the play calling from Ryan Day. Some of the pass attempts and routes that they were running, Northwestern was all over. The defensive line of Northwestern really did put some pressure on Justin Fields at some points. But once the play calling started going with Sermon all the way, and Trey Sermon had a huge second half when he took over, that's when the Buckeyes, pretty much closed the game out. So I'm not really putting a whole lot of, fault on Justin Fields for their performance. I think it was one of Ryan Day's worst games as far as play calling goes. But if they can figure out a way to get momentum offensively going from the first quarter to the fourth quarter against Clemson in this playoff game, they're going to look like the same old Buckeyes that they did against Indiana, against Michigan State, against Nebraska, because I don't know what the heck I watched. It was not the same Buckeyes that I watched this past Saturday.
Yeah, the big thing, too, people don't realize Trey Sermon had a big first half, too, but it was quiet. was a quiet $150 or whatever he had at the half. But once he got over that 200-yard mark, it's all everybody on Twitter and TV talked about. And then he ends up breaking Eddie George's record, which was really exciting to see. Really good game for Trey Sermon. I was watching the game with two buddies, and they're both huge Ohio State fans, and one of them said, I don't like Trey Sermon. He's not good. Get him off the field, put Master Teague in. I'm like, he currently has 14.5 yards per carry. He's like, no, he's just not good. And then when he broke the record, I just looked at him and I was like, he's not good. He just ran for 331 yards against one of the best defenses in the Big Ten. He's not good. Okay. So that's a fake fan right there, in my opinion. But anyways, Alex, we'll move on to you. Your thoughts on Justin Fields and the Buckeyes?
Yeah, I kind of have the same idea going here. I'm not too majorly concerned with Justin Fields underperforming. I just think that Northwestern's defense did put a lot of pressure on him, but I think the fact that they were still able to pull through and win the game, I'm not too majorly concerned about it. Okay. I do agree, to go against Clemson, I don't know. It might be more of a challenge because they are, again, on a different level, but I still think that they have a chance. I don't really see a major concern in it.
Okay. Jacob, your thoughts on Fields?
So before I talk about Justin Fields, I just want to point out two different things. One thing that blows my mind is you have guys at Ohio State's football program, Eddie George, Archie Griffin, Ezekiel Elliott, J.K. Dobbins, guys like that, and the top guy ever in a single rushing game performance is Trey Sermon, the transfer from Oklahoma. That just blows my mind. Kudos to him. It was a great game. It was fun to watch him really dominate like that. And also, just wanted to point this out because this kind of blew my mind too. I think he only had about 360 rushing yards on the whole season coming into this week. And then he has 331. So it just came out of nowhere, and I'm happy for him. It was a great game. And also, I just think Northwestern did not want to win this game in the end because I feel like they blew every opportunity to take control of the game. I don't know if it was necessarily the Buckeyes just being that good and that much better than them, but it was so frustrating to watch at times because, for example, Peyton Ramsey led a great drive down to about the 10, and then he threw a horrible pass in the back of the end zone that was intercepted. It was a weird game to watch, really. But I think with Justin Fields, I don't think that he's going to help them at all against Clemson myself because I just don't think he's going to perform that well against the defense because really last year I didn't think he played that great against Clemson. He didn't play that bad. He had an average game really. And obviously he threw the pick in the back of the end zone that kind of ended the game. Really wasn't his fault on that, but he didn't do anything that really helped the Buckeyes win that game at all. And then you take into account what he's done against Indiana and Northwestern this year. I'm more concerned about him, about his draft stock, because to me, I really personally don't think that Ohio State has produced that many great NFL quarterbacks. No. College quarterbacks they have. Look at the NFL quarterback they just put out there. Dwayne Haskins is a total bust right now. So
we'll get into really more about him in the NFL segment. Haskins not making smart decisions, but continue, Jacob.
Yeah, so if I'm an NFL quarterback and I'm taking into account how there's really not that many great Ohio State quarterbacks in the NFL ever really, why would I look at Justin Fields any differently? Because I get it, his skill set is very unique, but when he's performing this bad against college defenses and just the history that Ohio State quarterbacks have in the NFL, if I'm a scout, I might take this as a serious red flag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the best Ohio State quarterback we've seen in the NFL was Terrell Pryor, and he got moved to wide receiver, so if that tells you anything. And it is very weird to see how well these quarterbacks do in college, and it just does not translate to the NFL. You have guys like Troy Smith and Cardale Jones, G.T. Barrett. Braxton Miller got moved to wide receiver as well. So just seems like it's a good school to go to if you want to be successful in college, but you're kind of cursed in the NFL. It sucks, but that's just how it seems. I think Fields' draft stock has been hurt a little bit. I don't know if he's the second quarterback taken now anymore. I think, especially after last night's game where BYU and Zach Wilson, if Zach Wilson declares he might be the second quarterback taken, because he absolutely torched that defense last night in the Potato Bowl. Wait, was that the Potato Bowl? Did BYU play the Potato Bowl?
Boca Raton Bowl.
The Boca Raton Bowl, yeah. The Potato Bowl was Nevada. They won that one. So the Boca Raton Bowl, yeah. Zach Wilson, he looked good. So, again, I mean, it wasn't a great defense that he played, but I would say the numbers he's been putting up all season have him at right behind Lawrence, in my opinion. But Fields has a huge opportunity coming up to prove all the scouts and doubters wrong. So we'll see what he does. But I was a little disappointed to see how he performed against the Northwestern team. And going back to what Jacob said, it was really frustrating watching Northwestern, especially after how easily they moved the ball in that first drive, and they couldn't do it the rest of the game. And like you said, they had opportunities where they did move the ball that well, but then they blew it at the end. So I think Northwestern controlled about 80% of that game, honestly. So we'll see going forward. You can't play like that against the Clemson football team, and this is why. Number 3, Clemson handles number 2, Notre Dame, in a 34-10 win to earn their 6th straight ACC championship. Lawrence throws for 322 and 2 touchdowns and throws a pick. But Etienne adds 124 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He ran for 28 total yards and a fumble in the first game between Notre Dame and Clemson. So that's obviously a huge difference. Not much. I mean, Lawrence, he threw for 322, 2 touchdowns, did have a pick. He did have a rushing touchdown. Definitely controlled the game very well, but didn't play much better than Uiagalelei, who threw for 475 touchdowns. Uiagalelei, we can't discredit him. He had a great game against a very good defense when Clemson lost. Lawrence probably a little better game control, but I think the difference maker here was Dabo Swinney. That defensive game plan was huge. Shut down Book, shut down the Notre Dame offense. And it wasn't even the fact that Book was being rushed because of the front 7. A lot of coverage sacks in this game, and that's why I'm going to ask you guys, Brendan, I'll start with you. Was Trevor Lawrence the difference, or did you think it was Dabo Swinney coming better prepared for a second game against the Irish?
Yeah. Trevor Lawrence, definitely not the difference in this one. The defensive preparation that Dabo Swinney and their defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, took and put into this game, man, they had some guys back. That linebacker, James Skalski, who wasn't in the first matchup in South Bend, man, he looked prepared for this one.
On all but one play.
What?
On all but one play, he looked good. There was a play where Kyron Williams, the small running back, stood him up, but other than that, Skalski was unstoppable.
He looked so pissed that he wasn't in that first game.
Yep.
And he put all of his energy into this one. Made it hard for Kyron Williams to get any ground game going. Ian Book did have some missed opportunities. There was a 4th down pass. I don't remember the wide receiver name, but he dropped it. It would have been a huge gain on 1st down. The kicker missed the field goal. You just can't do that.
And not scoring a touchdown after that pick either.
Right.
You take a 10-0 lead there, it's a completely different game.
They just did not have enough attention to detail in this game. Notre Dame did. Yeah. Whereas Clemson had so much preparation into this one, and just, again, let the momentum all game. It's one of those games where, Brian Kelly needs to have his team emotionally prepared for it, and the game plan be executed from start to finish. And they didn't look, like they were into it, and they didn't look like they wanted to win it. And it's one of those games where you cannot make a mistake. You just need to put pressure on Trevor Lawrence, and they tried, but it's really hard to. And just another letdown on Brian Kelly's resume.
Jacob.
So I'm not trying to discredit Dabo Swinney at all, but I think that Trevor Lawrence was the difference. And it might not have been his play, but I think it was ultimately his presence. Because this is my thinking. Uiagalelei played a great game, right? But the offense going into it, I don't think they would have been nearly as confident as they would have been if Trevor Lawrence would have been in that game. Just because they know Trevor Lawrence. And I think the same goes for the defense. I think it's just the confidence factor there. Like, Trevor Lawrence is definitely the leader of the whole football team. Mm-hmm. So when you're going into the game with your leader, you're obviously going to be more confident going into the game. Like, he didn't play out of his mind or anything. He had a good game, but he was more of a game manager. But I think like Travis Etienne, I think he might have had a better game just because Notre Dame's got to focus on Trevor Lawrence because he is Trevor Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
So Etienne, that opens up the game for him. I think the defense is more confident because they see, oh, we got Trevor Lawrence back. He's going to lead the offense. Obviously, we can just go out and do our thing. So I think that Dabo came up with a great game plan, and it definitely was a huge reason why they won the game. But in the end, I think it's just the leadership of Trevor Lawrence, just the fact that he's in the game. It puts all eyes on him, takes more pressure off guys like Etienne and even the Clemson defense, just allows them to go out and do their thing. And I think that's kind of what led Clemson to beating Notre Dame this past week.
Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both Trevor Lawrence just being there and playing, and I think it's a little bit of both of the coaches too, because I agree with Jacob. Just the fact that Trevor Lawrence was there, it takes the pressure off the other guys, and he obviously performed very well. But on the other hand, between the coaches, I think Dabo was a lot more prepared than Coach Kelly was, because I know, like we were talking about this last week, how who was going to win the game, and I remember thinking that I thought Notre Dame was going to win, but the argument was that Clemson was going to come back for a revenge game and, totally come prepared and fighting to win. And that's what happened because, kind of like Brendan said, Clemson looked like, they were motivated to win. And Notre Dame they didn't look like, they barely showed up. And look what happened. They got annihilated. Huge score gap. And I just feel like they followed through with their game plan. I think Dabo had a huge game plan set up, and just that and part of the motivation as to wanting to have a revenge game and beat Notre Dame. But I think those are some of the main factors in what led to Clemson's win.
Ben.
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination, to be honest. I think the presence of having Trevor Lawrence out there did something for his team. It's just different preparing to face Trevor Lawrence than it is DJ. I'm going to butcher that, Ugalele, something like that. But it's just different to prepare to play Trevor Lawrence. And then Dabo Swinney and Brent Venables did a great job defensively, game planning to come back into this game and eventually earlier season loss. So I think that defensive game plan had to have been a bigger impact here because they absolutely shut down Notre Dame in that offense, which has had its moments where it looked suspect early in the year, but has actually become pretty solid as the year's gone on.
Yeah, I think it's very disappointing for the Irish and Kelly. You were a coach that's becoming known for losing in the big moment. You take down Clemson early in the year, which was a big moment. But this is a game you got to come better prepared for if you're Brian Kelly. I think Brendan and I talked about this before. Brian Kelly has put Notre Dame back on the map. Notre Dame is back on the map. After Lou Holtz retired, Bob Davies, Ty Willingham, and Charlie Weiss did everything they could to take the Irish off the map. Brian Kelly has put them back on, but Brian Kelly doesn't seem like that can coach that can put them back into the national championship conversation. I could be wrong. He has a chance to prove me wrong come January 1st. But as of right now, I think Kelly has done a great job making Notre Dame relevant again, but he will not be the coach that wins them a national championship. And the only way that he'll change my mind is by doing it. So I think Dabo Swinney was just the better coach, and he is the better coach. And I think I agree, having Lawrence there definitely makes you more confident. Why wouldn't you? Like Dabo said, it would be a mistake for the Heisman not to attach themselves to his name. He's the without a doubt number one pick, no matter even who has that pick, and he has nice hair. That just earns you respect right there. So, not a good look for the Irish. They have a chance to rebuttal, but we'll see. It could be even worse for them. So we'll move on to the SEC Championship, the 8 o'clock game. Number 1 Alabama wins in a shootout against number 7 Florida, 52-46. Mac Jones, good game. Devonta Smith, good game. But Najee Harris, can we add a third Bama Crimson Tide man to the Heisman discussion? Najee Harris is the man. Rushes for 178 and 2 touchdowns. Adds 3 more touchdowns in the pass game. So 5 total touchdowns for the Bama running back. Jacob, I'll start with you. is this Alabama offense going to be the deal breaker in winning a championship? Because it didn't look like the defense was that great. But if this offense is on full swing, it looks like they can win any game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know how you can stop the Bama offense personally, because Mac Jones, to me, he's looking all like an NFL quarterback. Devontae Smith is obviously an NFL wide receiver, and now Najee Harris, to me, is looking even more like an NFL running back. So you got three superstars who are easily going to be in the NFL someday. I just don't see how anybody can stop them. But I like how you mentioned the defense. I think that the only way Alabama loses is in a shootout. And I can very well see them losing in a shootout to Clemson personally. Notre Dame can maybe give them a shootout if Ian Book comes prepared, but I just personally don't see them being able to go toe-for-toe with them. But Clemson, I definitely think can go shootout with them because Trevor Lawrence has that firepower too. So the defense really needs to step up, but I think Alabama is definitely going to put up 35 to 50 points a game in the playoff. So the offense isn't going to be the issue, but the defense is definitely going to be the problem down the stretch.
Rumor has it Jalen Waddle could return as well. Ben?
I think for Alabama to win a national title, they've got to have the offense step up. Because I think you can drop a lot of points on that defense. I think it's possible. It's been shown, from Florida this past weekend. But offensively, they got so many game changers. Devonta Smith, Najee Harris, Mac Jones. But if those guys don't show up, I think they are a very beatable team. And Clemson probably has the best chance to go toe-to-toe with them just because Trevor Lawrence and just how that offense is and how many points they can stack up, they might have a chance.
Brendan?
Yeah, like what Jacob said. I mean, the only way you beat Alabama is in a shootout. You got to outscore them. You can't stop this offense. Mac Jones, he's going to be a star in the NFL. 418 yards and 5 touchdowns against Florida. It's just crazy. I don't know how you stop that. I mean, I don't know. Literally, I don't know what the defensive game plan is to stop Alabama. I mean, they go for the kill on every play. I think that's what Nick Saban's mindset is going in to a game. Can we put up 30 in the first quarter? How can we kill this team early on and win the game in the first half? Because if you put up 30 in the first quarter, first half, you're good to go. It's game over in the first half with this team. I don't know if Notre Dame is going to be able to do that. You can put all the pressure that you want on Mac Jones. There's other guys, though, that can make plays. And their defense obviously needs some work, allowing 46. But that is with Kyle Trask, so it's pretty understandable. But, yeah, their offense is night in, night out, putting up 50 points every night. You can't stop that.
Alex?
Alabama has an offense that's really hard to come by, and the fact that it's just so strong with just numerous players that equally have that strength, because it's different if you have one player that just kind of carries the whole team, but the fact that you have multiple says a lot. And I agree. I think the only way that you can attempt to beat Alabama is in a shootout. And I'm with Jacob. I feel like if any of these teams were to come somewhat close to giving them a run for the money, I feel like it would be Clemson because Trevor Lawrence does have that fire in him. But Alabama's offense, I feel like, is untouchable.
Yeah, I agree, especially if they get Waddle back, because then you got 4 game changers. Or what does Madden call them? X factors. You got 4 of them on offense alone. You lose your center in this game, but knowing Alabama and how they just reloaded offensive line even, I don't think that's going to be too big of a missing piece. Alabama, they should handle Notre Dame pretty easily, and I think they can go and beat any team in college football. So with that being said, the college football playoffs announced. Number 1, Alabama. Number 2, Clemson. Number 3, Ohio State and Notre Dame rounding it out at number 4 as Texas A&M and Oklahoma are the first 2 out. Brendan, I'll start with you. Did the committee get it right?
Well, first off, they're never going to get it right because it just isn't the right system. So there's that. But for the 4-team playoff, yes, they got it right. And the fact that, I don't know how you keep an undefeated Ohio State team out, and a Big Ten champ out. The whole thing was Notre Dame, Texas A&M, that 4th spot. Who gets in? I think Notre Dame has a slightly better resume than Texas A&M. You put both of them up against Alabama. Texas A&M got, Alabama did the same thing to Texas A&M than they did to Florida. So, they didn't prove themselves in that category. Notre Dame has a better win on their resume, taking down number 1 Clemson. So there's that. And they were in the top 4 pretty much the whole season. So really, how do you keep them out there? But, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, should they have been in? Maybe. Oklahoma was playing much better towards the end of the season than they did at the beginning of the season. But, when it comes to the committee, they say the games count. They lost to Kansas State, almost lost to Texas, so didn't have a great resume there. But I guess they got it right in the sense putting in a Notre Dame team that was in the top 4 the whole year.
Yeah, speaking of the Notre Dame, Texas A&M resumes, Notre Dame 10-1, not a conference champion, but has that number 1 win and a win over number 13 North Carolina, so 2 top 15 wins. Texas A&M 8-1, lost by 28 to Alabama, but only had 2 wins over teams with a winning record. Florida was their best win, so 6 of their wins were against losing record teams. And I think that was the difference in resumes. That was the key thing that kept Texas A&M out. The fact that they had a win against Florida, who ended up becoming a 3-loss team, and they only beat 2 teams with a winning record, which does not look good. Notre Dame had the slight advantage in strength of schedule, had an advantage of strength of record, and then obviously had an advantage in top 15 wins and top 25 wins. I think that was the biggest thing. Ben, I'll go to you. Did the committee get it right for a 4-team playoff? Are these the 4 best teams in football?
I mean, I think they got the first 3 teams right. Beyond that, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know. Like, should Texas A&M have gone in? Maybe they won their game. They didn't get blown out pretty badly. I don't.
They did get blown out pretty badly earlier in the year by
That's true, though.
Alabama, so.
Yeah.
Actually, by more, so. That's the thing. That's the thing. And Notre Dame had the big wins. And that's why I'm saying Notre Dame had the better resume. I think these are the 4 best teams in college football. I think Notre Dame beats Texas A&M if they're put on the same field.
Yeah, I mean, that Clemson was probably the only reason that Notre Dame got in, to be honest, because they're pretty neck and neck. Other than that, I think you could have really flipped a coin to decide which one you wanted to put in.
I think the committee also didn't want to see another blowout between Alabama. Not to say that Notre Dame's not going to get blown out. It might be a better game, but they already saw Alabama, Texas A&M. They already saw what they're going to see. I don't think they wanted to see it again. At least with Notre Dame, you don't know. That's the thing,
Yeah.
Alex, is this top 4? I mean, it is the top 4, but is it? Do you think it's right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think these are the 4 best teams in college football. I could see how Notre Dame and Texas A&M, I could see how it can kind of be questionable, but I just feel like at the end of the day, Notre Dame has the better resume. I feel like they're just the more consistent team.
Okay.
But as far as these 4 teams go, I do believe that they're the best in college football. And Brandon, I saw that the little concept that you made with how like the system should be, I thought it was really cool. Because I agree, like the system, I don't know. It's kind of can't talk. Neither here nor there, but if it were different, I thought it was really cool. But as far as how the system is right now, I think that they got it right.
I planned on shouting out, Brendan. I was going to read off your top 16 after we were done discussing. But Jacob, is this the correct top 4 in your opinion? Or should Cincinnati have been number 4?
You read my mind. I'm not going to say they should have been top 4, but I want to shout out those Bearcats. We fought hard all year. I think COVID's would ultimately killed them because I think if they would have played more games, they might have got more recognition, but they still probably wouldn't have made the playoff. But I love you, Bearcat Nation. I'm so sorry for this. But really, I think in the end, this is what the field was going to be if Ohio State won. I still think, and this might be an unpopular opinion, I think if Texas A&M and Ohio State play, I'm not necessarily saying Texas A&M would beat Ohio State. I'm just saying they would give them a really great game, and they could maybe potentially, and actually I'm just going to say it, probably beat Ohio State. I think Texas A&M is better than Ohio State this year in a way, but I understand you can't keep Ohio State out when they're an undefeated conference champion. I just don't think Ohio State's as good as they've been in the past couple of years. And I think Texas A&M, the bad loss to Alabama, that's what ultimately killed them. But if they would play Ohio State, I think that Texas A&M would end up being Ohio State. But yet again, I understand why the committee chose a top 4 like this.
Okay, that's a different take. Everybody was talking Notre Dame, Texas A&M, but I mean, yeah, Ohio State has looked, and it's not even just Ohio State. It is. I mean, the defense doesn't look the same. They had a good game against Northwestern, and then Fields obviously hasn't looked the same. But you have to put them in there. I mean, they're 6-0. They won their conference championship. They beat the teams they had to beat, and the brand is there as well. I mean, when you think football, you think Ohio State before you think Texas A&M. You think all 4 of these teams before you think Texas A&M. So I think maybe brand had a little bit to do with it. Unfortunately for the Aggies, the brand's not there. All you're known for is a drunken quarterback who didn't make it in the NFL. So shouting out Brendan, he made a bracket of what a 16-team playoff would be, and it would include every conference getting an automatic bid, even the FBS independents, and then 5 at-large bids, the top 4 being the Power 5, and each from a different top conference, and then a group of 5 also getting an at-large bid. So it would have 1 seed being Alabama, the FCS champ, taking on 16 seed Ball State, the MAC champ. Then it would go 8 seed Iowa State, who's the Big 12 at-large, taking on 9 seed Indiana, who's the Big 10 at-large. 4 seed Notre Dame, who's the ACC at-large, taking on 13 seed San Jose State, the Mountain West champ. 12 seed Ragin' Cajuns of Louisiana, the group of 5 at-large, taking on the 5 seed Texas A&M, who is the SEC at-large. And then over on the other side, you have 2 seed Clemson, the ACC champs, taking on the 15 seed UAB Conference USA champs. 10 seed Coastal Carolina, the Sun Belt champs, taking on the 7 seed Bearcats Cincinnati, who won the American Conference. 3 seed Ohio State winning the Big 10, taking on the 14 seed Oregon, taking on the Pac-12. And I like that because it could be the Rose Bowl game. And then the 11 seed BYU, the FBS champ or independent champs, taking on the 6 seed Oklahoma, who's the Big 12 champs. And I think we all agreed amongst our group chat that that's something that we would like to see. I mean, obviously some games, Alabama's going to annihilate ball, but Iowa State, Indiana, that would be fun to watch. I think Notre Dame would beat San Jose State, Texas A&M would win. Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina would be a fun one. Ohio State, Oregon would even be a fun one. BYU, Oklahoma, I think Zach Wilson gives them a little charge where they can compete with Oklahoma. And then as you get down to those other games, I think it gets more and more fun to watch, especially in the sense that I think it's a lot easier for a team like Clemson or Alabama to win 2 games than it is to win 4 in a row. And that's where you might see the knockoff, the upsets that you see in March Madness happen. And I think that's what everybody wants to see in college football is just a little bit of craziness.
Yeah, like when I was putting that together and I was looking at it after I completed it, it looked like a typical bracket. Because, of course you'll get the blowout wins between a 1 and 16 team. Because that's what happens in every, tournament and a playoff. Obviously,
don't forget, a couple years ago.
Who?
A couple years, UMBC or whatever, took down Maryland, Baltimore County.
Of course you can get an upset. So, if you look at the NBA, typically those first-round matchups are 4-0 series sweeps. So, of course you're going to get blowouts here and there. But, the whole dynamic of college football is obviously between the top three teams, Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State. Like the recruiting game is really lopsided with those three teams, and it's going to be those three teams every year. And whoever that fourth team is, whether it's Notre Dame or Oklahoma or someone else, like it's going to be the same every year, unless you start changing the way the college football playoff is. If you're giving teams like Cincinnati, UCF, BYU chances to make the playoff, then the recruiting game changes. Then, some players from the South and the North are going to see that, hey, I can go compete for a national championship at these other schools. It doesn't have to be Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, every year. The playing field will change. And the AAC commissioner came out after the rankings were revealed on Sunday saying, why are we playing the games if we don't even have a chance to make the playoff? And the playoff committee said that, hey, you have a chance to make the playoff, but you have to schedule better games. And that really doesn't make any sense to me because, yes, Ohio State is scheduling to Oklahoma, but they can lose to Oklahoma and yet still make the playoff because of just the game that they scheduled. Cincinnati can schedule a Power 5 team, lose, and have no chance of making the playoff. It's just the whole playing field is really unfair at this point in college football, and that's why I'm angry every year during this time. Yes, it's great sports talk, but it's really annoying when you see teams like Iowa State, Coastal Carolina, Cincinnati have no chance at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. And Jacob, I'm going to upset you here to touch on strength schedule. BYU looked like the better team than Cincinnati based on how they played against UCF. Cincinnati struggled a little bit with UCF, so that's another thing. Like, you'd get to see who really powers it out group of five-wise if you have Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, and BYU all making it. And it honestly would be fun to see which of those three can potentially get to the second round, hang with the big dogs. And I agree with Brendan, bring in the recruits. That would be awesome. I mean, it seems like the top five in recruiting is the same five teams every year. So we'll see. I thought this year specifically should have been a year that they tested it. And I will stick by this. The MLB tested something, loved it. Now they're trying to adapt to it. They're trying to make it the new norm. And if college football maybe would have just tested 8 or 16 teams, maybe it becomes the new norm. There's no doubt in my mind that the fans would have loved it. It's whether the committee would want to change things for good. And they're always going to catch backslack until things are changed. Because it's just, you're never going to make everybody happy with just 4 spots. I agree. If there's 130 teams, why are you playing if only 4 out of 130? What is the percentage on that? That's 3% of the teams are making it, are playing for the championship.
And Will, it just can't be a beauty contest. Like, even if they did expand it to 8 teams, it's just, an eye test.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, who has the better brands? Who played better this year? That's not a real playoff. You're picking teams based on who you want in the playoff.
Yeah.
And that's just not right. You need qualifications. You need to meet a criteria. Winning your championship, conference championship. And
then you have 5 spots for the eye test.
Right. Yeah, and include those other conferences. Include those group of 5 conferences. Mm-hmm. Like, they have good football.
Yeah.
We obviously saw that this year.
100%. So, moving on, we'll talk about the New Year's Six Bowl. So, give me your pick and score prediction for each of these. The Cotton Bowl will be number 7 Florida taking on number 6 Oklahoma. The Peach Bowl will be number 9 Georgia and number 8 Cincinnati. Fiesta Bowl number 25 Oregon and number 10 Iowa State. Orange Bowl is number 5 Texas A&M and number 13 North Carolina. And then the College Football Playoffs, the Rose Bowl, number 4 Notre Dame and number 1 Alabama. And the Sugar Bowl will be number 3 Ohio State and number 2 Clemson. Brendan, I'll start with you. What are your picks and score predictions for the New Year's Six Bowls?
Going over all of them
Yep.
at once? Okay.
Yep, just run them quick.
So Florida is going to beat Oklahoma. That has the potential to be a shootout. So give me like 54-48 Florida over Oklahoma. Georgia, Cincinnati, I can see this being similar to what UCF did to Auburn a few years ago. Cincinnati with the upset just because they're angry for not even being considered. Bearcats win 32-24. Oregon, Iowa State. I think the Cyclones win this one, and it's not really close. Make it 32-10. Orange Bowl, Texas A&M, and North Carolina. Texas A&M wins this one easily. It's a blowout, 48-14. Notre Dame, Alabama, another blowout. Alabama wins 54-17. And Ohio State, Clemson. This is the most intriguing one. And as much as I think Clemson's going to win, I want Ohio State to win just because I have a deep hatred now for Clemson. It sounds like Dabo Swinney wants to make enemies with everyone. Give me Ohio State 38-34.
Jacob.
So Cotton Bowl, I think it's going to be a shootout too. I got Florida winning that one 49-42. Peach Bowl, I mean, this should come as no surprise. I think Cincinnati is going to beat Georgia in this game. It's going to be 27-23. It's going to be a really close game. Oregon and Iowa State, I think that has the potential to be a really close game. And I got to admit, I just have this feeling about Oregon because they had a bad start to the season kind of, and now they're starting to come on a little bit. I got them winning 31-28 in that game. Orange Bowl, Texas A&M, I have them winning 35-21 over North Carolina. Alabama, Notre Dame, I'm going to say that this one's probably about a 38-24 Alabama taking out Notre Dame. And Clemson, Ohio State, this is going to be just a really bold prediction. I just have a horrible feeling about the Buckeyes with Justin Fields and their defense and how it will hold up against Clemson. This is going to be my biggest margin of victory. Clemson beats Ohio State 42-17. I just have this feeling that Trevor Lawrence is going to go off and Justin Fields might not show up. So I think that Clemson's really just going to dominate the Buckeyes.
Ben, you look lost. What's your picks?
Let's go. Florida, I think they're going to get a bounce-back game, probably win by 2 scores in the Cotton Bowl over Oklahoma. Then the Chick-fil-A Bowl, Georgia, Cincinnati. I'm going to go with Cincinnati to pull off that Group of 5 over Power 5 upset. Oregon, Iowa State. I think that's easy. Iowa State's going to roll by probably 3-4 scores over Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. The Orange Bowl, I'll take Texas A&M by probably 14 points. Rose Bowl, take Alabama by 21. And the Sugar Bowl, I'll take Clemson by 7 or 14. It's not going to be as bad as Jacob said. I mean, he's smoking crack if he thinks it's going to be that bad. I think it'll be more competitive than he thinks.
Called out.
But
Alex. Ben's not going to like my take. Alex.
All right. So for the Cotton Bowl, I'm thinking Oklahoma. I agree it might be a shootout, but I think Oklahoma is going to come through and win that game. For Georgia and Cincinnati, I'm going to go with Georgia again because I agree. I think Cincinnati is not taking it well, that they're not in it. So I think Georgia's going to come through with that game. For the Fiesta Bowl and the Orange Bowl, I think those are both going to be games won by landslides. And I think that Iowa State and Texas A&M respectively are going to win each game. And I think, like I said, it's going to be like annihilation. For the Rose Bowl, I'm going to go with Alabama by a handful of points over Notre Dame. And the hard one is the Sugar Bowl because, I don't know, I think it's going to be a really, really close game between these two. And I think it's going to be really competitive. As much as I am an Ohio State fan, and I really, really hope they win, I just hope that they bring it because I feel like something tells me Clemson's going to win that game. But I feel like if Ohio State really brings on their A game, they have a chance to beat them, and I really, really hope that they do. I think that's going to be the game to watch. That's definitely going to be close.
All right. I have Florida in the shootout as well. I have 49-45 Gators over Oklahoma. In the Peach Bowl, I have 31-27 Cincinnati winning that game. In the Fiesta Bowl, I'm going 38-21 Iowa State over Oregon. In the Orange Bowl, I have Texas A&M beating North Carolina 34-24, a 10-point win. I think Sam Howell and Javonte Williams are going to have a good enough game to put 24 up on the Aggies, but the Aggies will expose that North Carolina defense for 34 points. On the Rose Bowl, I have a final score of 38-21 Alabama. I think it's a 17-point game, about the spread, because I think Book brings a little bit of the fire at the beginning, but Alabama's offense is just too much to handle for the Irish defense. And in the Sugar Bowl, 38-17 Clemson. I said the same thing, Ben, about Notre Dame, Alabama. It's going to be closer than people think. And that's what everybody's saying about this game, and I don't think it is. I think it's going to be a Clemson win handedly. I think Lawrence is going to expose a defense that has obvious holes, and I think Justin Fields isn't what we thought coming into the season. And I think Clemson wins by 21, and we have Bama-Clemson part 76, or whatever it is. It seems like it's been that many times. So that's it for college football. Obviously, a lot to talk about as the playoffs are picked. And we'll keep it with football. Speaking of playoffs being picked, a lot of playoff implications in the NFL. From this past weekend, the Bills clinched the AFC East title with a 48-19 win over Vic Fangio's Denver Broncos. The Dolphins hold on to defeat the Patriots 22-12 and keep their playoff chances alive. The Seahawks defeat the football team 20-15 and clinch a playoff berth. Have not clinched the NFC East yet, as Washington holds on to the top spot in the NFC East as the Browns beat the Giants. The big news for the football team is Haskins caught at the club without a mask. Way to go, guy. So the Jets, Ben, no 0-16. It's over. They take down the Rams 23-20 to bump the Rams back into the wild card, and they end their winless season. This is the most Jets thing to do as they lose the number one pick to the Jaguars now. Chiefs, they hold on to win over the Saints 32-29 to build on the lead for the top seed in the AFC, because the Bengals take down the Steelers on Monday night 27-17, giving the Browns a chance to play for the AFC North division title. And Juju's having a chat with Tomlin probably as we speak, as the funniest thing I saw all weekend was the Bengals tweeting Pittsburgh's TikTok star fumbled the ball. That is amazing. Corvette. Anyways, Juju needs to find a new car because it's not working out for him, as Von Bell teaches him who's boss, don't dance on the logo. And, man, Joe Hayden tweeted out at Juju and said, hey, it's not your dancing is the reason we're losing. The grammar in that tweet from Joe Hayden made me lose brain cells. It was really bad. Give it a read. He said R-A-R-E instead of our, O-U-R. It was bad. Come on, Joe. Got to do better than that. So let's talk about some of these games. Jacob, what games caught your eye this past weekend? Was it the Bengals upsetting the Steelers or Jets blowing the first seed? What do you take away from this weekend?
So, the one thing that I take away from Bengals-Steelers, I just personally didn't think the Steelers were that good to begin with. I was surprised that they started out 11-0. They really won a lot of close games. So it doesn't really surprise me that the Bengals won. I mean, it kind of does, obviously, because Bengals are obviously the Bengals. But at the same time, that offense for Pittsburgh is just spiraling out of control. And I loved that Von Bell was the guy that laid the hit on Juju Smith-Schuster, because he was the one that was talking pregame, too, how he's just fed up with it. He just wants to put a hit on Juju, and then he gets his chance, and he comes through with it. So,
it says, I told you. Pulls his mask down. I told you.
Yeah, for sure. But the other games, so the Rams and Jets game, obviously good for the Jets to win. Bad that they lose a number one pick. But I'm looking at it more in the Rams' perspective. They're just pretenders now to me. I thought that the Rams were legitimate Super Bowl contenders just because of that defense. And when Jared Goff and Cam Akers have been on, that offense has looked really well. But to me, this just showed the inconsistencies of Jared Goff. And I don't think that he can lead the Rams to the Super Bowl. Maybe potentially a win in Wild Card Weekend, but no more do I think that they are Super Bowl contenders. I legitimately thought that they had the second or third best odds at one point to go to the Super Bowl, but now not anymore. And then not necessarily wanting to talk about the game at all, but Dwayne Haskins, just what in the world, dude? Like, what is your problem? You played horrible in the game. Like, he's definitely the reason, I think at least, why they lost to the Seahawks, because it wasn't like Washington's defense didn't show up. Washington's defense contained Russell Wilson for the most part. It was just Dwayne Haskins could not make a play when he needed to make a play. So really, he's hurting his chances at being the starter in Washington. I think his days are all but numbered after this. I think he's only starting, obviously, because all their other quarterbacks are hurt. But I think, too, it's not helping him for his next team, because his next team is going to look at him and say, oh, well, you didn't play that well in Washington to begin with, and then you're going to do something this stupid when you're supposed to be the leader of our team. So it's just a horrible look for him. And the last thing, this is going to be a really unpopular take, I know, but this is just the worried Browns fan in me. Should the Browns be worried? I think potentially the answer could be yes. And this is the only reason why. Because the Dolphins, they looked pretty well against the Patriots. They can win out. And then the Colts, they're playing the Steelers, who are obviously having their problems. They can win that game and then win in Week 17. And then potentially the Ravens are obviously looking really good. So the Ravens can win out. And then that would leave the Browns having to win out the rest of their games, because I was unaware of this until this past week. If the Browns and everybody else somehow – well, if the Browns lose a game, I should say, and then the other teams win out, the Browns are out. So that's just the worried Browns fan in me. Like, I just don't want to see it happen. I think that in the end, the Browns are ultimately going to get in the playoffs, but I can just see that scenario possibly happening, and it worries me as a Browns fan.
Mm-hmm. Ben, your thoughts on this last weekend's playoffs implications?
Well, I gotta thank the Bengals for really not just cracking, they were just kicking the door down to the AFC North for the Browns. But I think that really exposed a lot. If you get the run game going against the Steelers and then just have your defense step up and make plays when they need to, you can beat the Steelers team very easily. Big Ben hasn't looked good, and they're probably going to continue to stick with him just because he is a future Hall of Famer and been a starter for so long. They're probably not going to bench him. So all you got to do is just put some pressure on him, which the Browns can do, and just have your secondary step up, which we'll see if that happens. But you got to thank the Bengals for opening up the door to the Cleveland Browns to possibly get that AFC North title.
Brendan.
Yeah, a lot of good games this weekend. Really, I was watching that Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game Monday night, and I legitimately thought Pittsburgh was going to come back and win, and that the Bengals were going to get all of our hopes up after that first half. But then the Steelers showed that they are just not in. They just are so out of character right now. They look like a completely different team than they did those first 11 games. I don't know what's going wrong. Roethlisberger is showing his age. You put pressure on Roethlisberger, and he misses his targets. He can't throw the ball because he's obviously not mobile. And you cover up Juju, you cover up Chase Claypool, then they don't really have an offense to work with. Because Snell, obviously, Bengals swallowed up Snell all night. So that was fun to watch. But the one game that, again, I think the Chiefs seem to be winning with buzzer beaters every weekend. The Chiefs holding on over the Saints. Pat Mahomes making a couple of crazy plays. That throw to the back of the end zone where he was running out of bounds. The guy was completely covered up. You couldn't even see him, and he somehow snuck it into the back left corner. It's another crazy throw by Mahomes, and Drew Brees being back for that game. It looks like it could potentially be Super Bowl matchup, but I don't know if Drew Brees is the same Drew Brees that we were watching at the beginning of the year before he got injured. Just the fact that was a close game was fun to watch, and yeah, it was really a fun weekend of football. And to mention Haskins real quick, I don't know what it is with athletes and strip clubs right now, but James Harden just got in trouble for going to a club over the weekend too. So, but that's James Harden. He doesn't care about anything anymore.
No, he doesn't. Alex, your thoughts on this last weekend's playoff implication games?
Oh my God, so many surprises this past weekend. Starting off with the Browns, I'm really happy that they won against the Giants. Something told me all along that they were going to win, but the fact that they just came through and did it, I'm really happy about. I do agree with Jacob. I'm also worried Browns fan. I feel like they're going to have to win out the next two games in order to make the playoffs. I mean, also considering what the Ravens do and what the Colts do. But honestly, after seeing what happened this past weekend, I mean, first of all, I would hope that the Browns could take down the Jets. But after seeing the Steelers these past couple of games, I feel like the Browns have it in them to take down the Steelers. I mean, like everyone's saying, I mean, we're seeing now, the Steelers are not who they used to be. They had winning streak, and now they're just on a losing streak. I mean, they lost to the Bengals, which thanks to the Bengals for opening up the door for us. But I was just so surprised because I would have never in a million years guessed that the Steelers would have lost against the Bengals. So I honestly feel like they're not who they used to be. They're letting their guard down, and I feel like if they keep up their losing streak, then the Browns have it in them to, I think, win the division title. And I don't know, looking at the Rams game, I agree with Jacob. I feel like they're just showing, I mean, you lose to the worst team in the league. Like, literally, the worst team in the league travels across the country to annihilate you. What does that tell you? I feel like the Rams have been putting on a show, but at the end of the day, they're just, to lose to the worst team in the league, I feel like that says something. So after this week, I'm keeping my hopes up for the Browns because I really do feel like they have playoff potential in them. But definitely a lot of interesting games, a lot of surprises. Like I said, I never would have guessed the results of some of these games.
Yeah, and what I've learned from this past weekend is I'm just as, I'm probably just as good of an investment as Juju is. I know how to do that dance, and I didn't fumble this last weekend, so come on, man. Put down the phone, and you got to let a spark on that team because it is the offense that is losing you these games. Definitely not helping that their linebacking core is weak due to injury, but, Minka's playing his heart out. T.J. Watt and Stephon Tuitt playing very well. Joe Hayden had a couple great pass breakups this past game. But the offense just is not there. Big Ben, it's catching up to him. Old and fat. So we'll move on to the playoff picture now. On the AFC, the Chiefs have the 1 seed at 13-1. They have clinched the AFC West title for a couple weeks ago already. Bills have the 2 seed now at 11-3 as they clinched the AFC title this past weekend. Steelers fall down to 3 at 11-3, but Bills have that tiebreaker win. They have clinched already. The Titans have the 4 seed at 10-4. They have a 98% chance of making the playoffs. Cleveland Browns have the 5 seed at 10-4. They have a 93% chance of making the playoffs. Colts have the 6th spot at 10-4. They have a 92% chance of making the playoffs. Dolphins in the 7th spot. They're 9-5. Their playoff percent chance is at 32%, as they have the 9-5 Ravens, who are in the hunt with an 86% chance just to an easier strength of schedule. And the Raiders, 7-7 after this loss to the Chargers, fall to a 1% chance of making the playoffs. A lot has to happen for the Raiders to squeak in there. For the NFC, Packers 11-3 at the top spot right now by a game as they clinched the AFC North title a couple weeks ago. The Saints have the 2 seed at 10-4. They've clinched a playoff berth. The Seahawks 10-4, the 3 seed. They have also clinched a playoff berth. The Washington football team has the 4 seed at 6-8. They have a 74% chance of winning the NFC East and making the playoffs. The 5 seeds, the Los Angeles Rams, 9-5 with a 98% chance to make the postseason. The 6 seeds, the Buccaneers, at 9-5 with a 99% chance to make the postseason. And the 7 seeds of the Cardinals at 8-6 with a 70% chance to make the postseason. In the hunt, the 7-7 Bears with a 31% chance. The 6-8 Vikings with a 2% chance. The 5-9 Cowboys with a 5% chance because of the NFC East. The 5-9 Giants with an 11% chance. And the 4-9-1 Eagles with a 10% chance. So you're saying there's a chance as 3 teams with laughable records still have that percent chance just because of the laughable division. So week 16, a big week. A lot of clinching scenarios, guys, here. I'm going to read off this list. Cleveland clinches a playoff berth with a win and a Baltimore loss, or a win and a Miami loss, or a win and an Indianapolis loss. So that Colts-Steelers game is kind of a win-win scenario for them because if they can beat the Jets, if the Colts beat the Steelers, Week 17 is the AFC North Championship. If the Colts end up losing to the Steelers, Browns have no chance at the AFC North, but they then clinch. So therefore, it's a win-win game there. Obviously, the ultimate scenario for the Browns is a win, a Colts loss, or a Colts win, and either Miami and Baltimore to lose. So they have that chance at the AFC North, but they still clinch next week. So a lot of different ways for the Browns. As for Indianapolis, they clinch a playoff berth with a win and a Baltimore loss, or a win and a Miami loss. Kansas City clinches a first-round bye with a win, or a Pittsburgh loss, or a Buffalo loss. Pittsburgh clinches the AFC North with a win or a Cleveland loss. Tennessee clinches the AFC South title with a win and an Indianapolis loss. Tennessee clinches a playoff berth with a win or a Miami loss or a Baltimore loss. Arizona clinches a playoff berth with a win and a Chicago loss. Green Bay clinches a first-round bye with a win and a Seattle loss. The Rams clinch a playoff berth with a win or a Chicago loss or Arizona win. New Orleans clinches the NFC South title with a win or a Tampa Bay loss. Seattle clinches the NFC West with a win. Tampa Bay clinches a playoff berth with a win or a Chicago loss. And then Washington clinches the NFC East title with just a win or a Giants loss. So that's a lot. Brendan, I'll start with you. What are some of your favorite matchups in Week 16, and what clinching scenarios do you see playing out, actually happening?
Yeah, there's a lot of good matchups this weekend. Obviously, the Colts and the Steelers are a huge one. It's just the fact that the Steelers need a win to get back on track and find who they are before the playoffs begin. Because you really don't want to go into the playoffs on a 5-game losing streak or any losing streak that, for that matter. Football team. No, never mind. I'm not going to mention that one.
Well, they can clinch with a win, so it's a good one to mention.
They can clinch. Can they finally win the East this weekend? They can clinch the NFC East with a win this weekend. So to kind of put everyone out of their misery for that division.
Well, with a win and a Giants loss, but the Giants are playing the Ravens, so their odds are very good since they have the Panthers.
But one game that's really a lot on the line is Tennessee and Green Bay. Green Bay needs a first-round bye with the win and hoping Seattle loses. But Tennessee trying to clinch the AFC South title and hoping Indianapolis loses. So a lot on the line there. And a really good game between a 10-4 Titans team and a 11-3 Packers team.
Jacob, favorite matchups, clinching scenarios you'd like to see play out?
So my favorite matchup, it's kind of an obvious one at first, is the Colts and Steelers, just because it's such a huge implicator. Obviously, the Colts win, then like how you said, Will, assuming that the Browns beat the Jets, which they should, then that's the AFC North Championship. And then if the Colts lose and the Browns win, then the Browns are in the playoffs. So it's huge if you're a Cleveland sports fan. Absolutely
the
huge
implications on a game that you're not in. It's wild.
Exactly. I'll be watching that game like a hawk right there.
Yeah.
Hold on.
What?
Yeah, what's up?
I forgot to mention that. I just don't think any of that happens this weekend. Like, the Ravens are winning. The Dolphins are winning. The Steelers are winning. Like,
if the Steelers win, then the Browns clinch.
No, Cleveland fans are going to go into Week 17 with so much on the line and having not beat Pittsburgh in a long time, I just find it hard to believe all this is going to happen.
Personally, as a Browns fan, I hope that the Steelers win this week. I mean, I obviously want to win the division, but I want to be in the playoffs more than I want to win the division. I just want to get to the playoffs right now. So let's just have Pittsburgh win. Let's just get in. Let's just get it over with. That's my personal opinion on that. But so I think that's the game of the week. But two other games that aren't really going to be talked about, but I think that they could be really big games. It's the Cardinals and 49ers, and it's the Bears and Jaguars. Now, both teams are obviously playing not too good teams, but it's huge implications for both of them. The Cardinals need to keep winning, and the Bears need to keep winning in order to keep their playoff hopes alive. So I think the implications for those two teams, it's just huge, and they're both in must-win situations. But the clinching scenarios that I can see happening, I think the Chiefs are going to clinch that first round bye. They're just going to get it over with. I can see the Seahawks potentially clinching the NFC West because I think they're going to win a close game against the Rams. But I also would not be surprised to see the Rams come in and beat the Seahawks too. The Saints, I think they're going to ultimately end up clinching the South this week. And Tampa Bay, I think they're going to get that playoff berth locked up. Shouldn't be much doubt there. But yeah, I think that I'm looking more like that the Steelers are going to beat the Colts. I think they're going to have a bounce back week, and then the Browns could ultimately clinch that berth too, potentially.
Mm-hmm. Alex, games you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I think I can agree with everybody. The Colts and Steelers is going to be my game of the week, just because, like everyone said, it's going to kind of determine what's going to happen for the future of the Browns, at least for this season. I'm going to assume, anything can happen on any given Sunday or Monday. As we saw last week. But I'm going to hope and assume that the Clevelands can beat the Jets. And as far as the Colts and Steelers go, I agree with Jacob. I would prefer to be in the playoffs over a division title, but anything can happen. Honestly, I am not sure between the Colts and the Steelers who's going to win this game. I feel like, again, it's going to be really close and really competitive. As a Browns fan, I kind of hope that the Steelers would win just so they can have their bounce back and the Browns are in the playoffs. But something just tells me that the Colts might follow through with this game. I'm not sure. I think it'll definitely be an interesting game to watch, and I think it's going to be close. But definitely whatever happens there, I think it'll benefit the Browns either way. I think it's a win-win for them.
Jets are on a one-game winning streak, so they are pretty dangerous at this point.
So dangerous. You better watch out.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line this
defense.
Week. Yeah, there's a lot on the line this week. Frank Gore, he's fighting for. He said he couldn't be on an 0-16 team, so I don't. It's gonna be a fun week. Every week is more and more fun. Titans Packers is what I'm watching out for. Obviously, Colts Steelers, Browns Jets. Just see where that goes. I asked for two things for Christmas. I said, just give me one of them. I looked up to the higher powers. I said, just give me one. Notre Dame beats Clemson, or the Browns pull off an AFC North comeback and win the title. Well, we saw Notre Dame Clemson. So if they're going to give me one of my Christmas wishes, which we'll get into, Browns beat the Jets, Colts beat the Steelers, and Week 17 is the AFC North title. Browns pull it off. But, Brendan, going back to that Browns-Steelers game, have you guys seen what the tickets are going for right now? About $1,100 a ticket for Browns-Steelers.
I thought it would be more expensive. I honestly thought it would be like $1,500.
I thought too, just because the fact that there's only 12,000 tickets allowed. But yeah, that's the cheapest ticket you're going to get, and your nose will bleed for $1,100. But scenarios I see playing out, I think Washington clinches this week. I think Tampa Bay clinches their playoff berth. Seattle, after the Rams' downfall last week, I think they clinched the NFC West title this week with a win. Saints clinch. Rams, I think, have to hold on to another week because I think Chicago and Arizona can both win. They clinch with an Arizona win, so they should clinch this week. Green Bay isn't going to get a first-round bye this week. Maybe next week they can get it, so they'll be playing all the way through. But I think Kansas City gets their first-round bye this week. But Week 16, it's going to be a fun week. A lot can happen And I think next week's going to be a really fun discussion as far as this podcast goes. But that is it for the NFL. So now it is time for last call. And speaking of Christmas wishes, Alex, I'll start with you. What is at the top of your Christmas list sports-wise? And what's at the top of your Christmas list material-wise? Maybe a toy, a game system. What are you feeling?
Oh, God. I think for all the Browns fans out there, my sports Christmas wish this year, definitely, if not a title for the Browns, I would hope that they can make the playoffs or even the Super Bowl. I mean, let's go for it. It's Christmas. I would hope that the Browns can make it to the Super Bowl. That would be my wish. I don't know how likely, but hey, we made it this far. Anything could happen. As far as materials, I am not sure. I mean, I guess this year I'm hoping for like a little bit of makeup when I asked for a bracelet, but I guess ultimately, after this year, I'm hoping for happiness. I want happiness in 2021. I want a good year, just good health, happiness. Sounds corny, but I feel like after this year, it's those little things that we take for granted.
All good. I love it. Brendan, sports-wise and material-wise, what are you asking Santa for?
I think we can all say, hope the Browns make the playoffs. That's getting closer. Sports-wise, a boatload of money for a contract for Francisco Lindor to stay in Cleveland. That would be just for one more year, finish out the Cleveland Indians team name era. That would be a big wish. Material-wise, I'm asking for Apple Watch and a GoPro, the newest version, I think 8K or something like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
There you go. Jacob.
So I'm going to stick with the Browns here, sports-wise. I just want to see them make the playoffs. Obviously want to see them win a playoff game, but let's just start with making the playoffs first. But actually, over the Browns, just because I'm a super fan of this team, I just want to see the Cavs be relevant. That's my big Christmas wish. I'm not asking for them to necessarily make the playoffs. That would be awesome. But get 30 wins, get people actually talking about you in a good way again. That's just what I want to see, because it's just painful watching your childhood fan favorite team just go through all this. So I just want to see them be good again. And at the top of my list, material-wise, so I'm a big-time jersey freak. I collect a lot of different jerseys. I have one on right now, Larry Nance Jr., getting ready for that Cavs home opener tonight.
There you go.
But I'm hoping that I can get the young rookie Isaac Okoro, get his jersey. That would be nice. Or I like getting the throwback ones too. There's this one with the Milwaukee Bucks. They have their old logo on it. It's kind of like green and purple in a way. And I was a big Ray Allen fan back in the day too when he was playing in Boston and Miami. So I'd love to get a Ray Allen Milwaukee Bucks jersey there. I think that would be awesome. But also with Alex, just happiness. Just get the world back on track.
Yeah.
Which Okoro jersey? Which version?
Dude, honestly, at this point, I really don't care. I was going to say the new City Edition one, but I actually got for my birthday, I got, what was it? I think it was the Andre Drummond one. I got it for my birthday. So, I'm just down for anything at this point.
For me, sports-wise, obviously, I want the Browns to make the playoffs. When the AFC North would be amazing. I want the Indians to spend some money. There's a lot of free agents still out there, too. Get somebody. But no, I'm praying more for the Browns at this point because the Indians almost seem like a lost cause. Unfortunately, always sucks when your team's starting a rebuild. That seems like what they're doing. As for material / toy-wise, I don't know if you guys know this. I'm a big Marvel collector. I have 2 Cap shields. I have Thor's hammer. I have a giant Groot statue over here on my desk. And I have both gauntlets. I have Spider-Man and Green Goblin from the first movie statues, limited to 1,200 pieces. Just a lot of Marvel stuff. And they released this past year a Deadpool animatronic head that says over 1,000 phrases. And I asked Rosie for it. Let's hope she comes through, and I have Ryan Reynolds talking on my shelf next to me next week. If not that, I also am a big fan of autographed sports memorabilia. I think my biggest wish, as far as that goes, would probably be a Chase Claypool autographed Irish jersey. He's my favorite player to ever don the blue and gold. Close second is probably Brady Quinn. And I DM'd him. I haven't gotten DM'd back. I just asked if I could FaceTime him for Christmas. We'll see if I get to FaceTime chat with Chase Claypool. Maybe not the best time. Not doing too hot. So, but
he's on TikTok too.
Yeah. So maybe he'll DM me back, and I'll let you guys know how the chat goes if it ends up happening. But if not, what's the worst that can happen? You gotta shoot your shot, right?
That would be amazing. Juju Smith-Schuster, Dan's son, the Browns. Well, the Browns didn't even have a logo at midfield.
Yeah.
But
there you go.
He did that, and then Denzel Ward comes, blows him up.
Two Ohio State guys, huh?
Touchdown.
Von Bell and Denzel Ward. But, I mean, I would love to FaceTime Claypool. I love watching him at Notre Dame. And I'm a Browns fan, but I love watching Claypool succeed in Pittsburgh. I'm a big fan of watching my favorite college player succeed. I love Jalen Smith. I love that he's in the top 5 tackles in the NFL. I wish Brady Quinn would have worked out, so on and so forth. Love seeing O-Line U work out in the NFL as well. You know, it seems like we always have 3 to 4 all-pro selections in the offensive line. But that would be my top wish, is either Deadpool or an autographed jersey from Chase Claypool. But, again, I agree with you guys. I also just wish I could give my mom a hug and not have to wear a mask at her house tomorrow when I open up presents with her. So for this all to be over would probably be my ultimate wish, because I'm a big family guy and it really sucks not getting to see my grandparents and such. So sorry to make it sad at the end there, but it's real. Like, this sucks. And if I could give up the Indians being good for 10 years to just hug my grandpa, I would. So
I'm the same way. I'm a huge hugger. Like, I pretty much hug everybody that I meet or see.
I want to hug Brendan right now. Like, I can tell he's looking at me. I just want to give him a hug. Love you, buddy.
I want to be able to hug people again and not feel like...
Exactly. See, Brendan's judging me right now because it's 2020. He's like, you better stay away from me. That's why I'm in Cleveland. All I want is a hug. Hey, weather's nice. You guys need to come down and play some golf. Tannenhof's open 365 days a year, so if you guys want to come down, let me know. We can set a date. If the weather stays nice, they're open. We'll just have to wear some long sleeves, obviously. But
it's supposed to snow
tomorrow
night.
Never mind.
Yeah, there's a 90% chance it snows for Christmas.
No, I'm okay with that.
It's going to be a white Christmas.
I'm okay with that. Maybe we'll shoot for January then. Maybe if you guys come back a week early, we can hit the links. So.
Oh, yes, please.
But that is it for episode 8 of RaiderZone. Thank you again to everybody that listened. I'm Will Brienza, alongside me Jacob Utah, Brendan Deviney, Alexander Patron, and Ben Johnson Bowers, who had to part his ways a little bit early. We thank you all for listening, and as always, go Raiders and have a Merry, Merry Christmas.